Smile.
But I'm not happy.
People
Why are you
staring.
I don't want to do this.
You have to. They'll know
No one
something's
cares
wrong.
about your
Why
life.
is that bad?
Nobody cares. They won't understand.
Nobody
You want to
cares.
go home. You'll hurt their feelings.
This was ridiculous.
What are we even talking about? Just keep them happy.
What if they
They're
think
gonna
you're
be mean?
stupid?
Just keep them happy. Just keep them happy. Just lie.
I'm not here to sugarcoat, life's already a bumpy road. Too much shelter causes pain, let's just be real honest. Things are gonna knock you down, avoidance will not help you out. Let's talk it through, here me and you, let's keep it real honest.
Welcome to Real Honest, the podcast where I share candid thoughts and feelings about life, love, and relationships, God and church, adulting, the workplace, and everything in between. I'm your host, my name is Samantha, and you probably won't always like me, but I'll always be honest with you. You guys, hi! Merry Christmas season! I know it has been like 2 months, I think, almost exactly 2 months. There just was a lot going on. I was not home for like half of the fall, and when I was home, I was either sick or work was really busy. A lot of traveling, a lot of stuff happening with friends, met a man. Haha, we know how that always turns out for me. So let's see how long he sticks around before I bring you all along on that adventure. But let's just jump right in. As far as a goals check-in, I did not go back and listen to my last episode from 2 months ago. I don't remember what my progress was with my goals. I don't even remember what goals I was working on in the last 2 months because I have not written in my planner since the middle of October. And that's like the number one downfall for me is when I stop using my planner and I'm not writing things down, just like things are getting done, but not necessarily organized things in any particular like set manner. I do know that my goal for November was to write. I wanted to write every single day in November in hopes of getting my novel drafted by the end of the year. I wrote 15 of the 30 days in November, which feels really shitty. However, I was out of town for half the month, so I feel a little justified in not totally succeeding in that. To other authors out there, I would love to hear what your timeline is because I was explaining to one of my friends about how I'm about halfway done with the novel and I've been tracking like how many words I write in a session or whatever. And I said, realistically, I think I can have the first draft completed by December 31st. And then I'll probably spend a couple months at the beginning of next year editing. And then I can like start querying and stuff. I don't need to do like a bunch of drafts. Like my first draft takes forever. I've literally been working on it all year. But I kind of like, it really is the final, like I edit as I go, which I know people say not to do, but that's just how my brain works. Like I have to organize things as I go. And if I'm working on something that doesn't make sense, like I'll go back and fix it to make sure that it makes sense so that I can continue. It's just how I have to organize my brain. But one of my friends was like, that sounds like a really long time. Like this seems like even like 2 months of editing seemed like such a long process to him. And I'm sitting there like, do you want to write a novel? Are you writing a novel? Do you have all of these maps and charts and story and character laid out in your head and you're going to have it done in 6 weeks? Like, what are we talking about? It's December 16th as of this recording, and I no longer think that the draft is going to be done by December 31st. It is possible if I write every day between now and the 31st, but if that's not realistic, I'm probably not going to do that. But I'm trying to make sure that when I don't do the stuff that I want to do, I focus on what I did do and what I did get done. So even though I did not write every day in November, I wrote half the days in November, which is a massive improvement from October and September in previous months. I'm very excited about that. I had my first feedback session with my beta readers where I finally got all of them to actually read and give some feedback, which was really, really helpful. All of them really liked it and are very excited about it, which is awesome. And I also was able to explain to them my process and things that I get stuck on. And that was really fun because just when I was able to say like, I'm stuck on this particular story beat or whatever, like, do you guys have ideas of how I could like better do that? Which I'm gonna caveat here, if you're a writer or an editor or a beta reader or whatever, beta readers, like their job is to just give you feedback on like the reading experience. They're not supposed to edit or proofread or help you with any of that. You're also not supposed to have friends and family be your beta readers. Because my friends and family are beta readers and half of them are perfectionists, and one of them is one of my best friends who has read every previous version of my book and also knows me really well, they're doing a whole lot extra. So just, I'm aware that this is not what beta readers do. However, it was really helpful for them to hear like what I'm struggling with and not have a single idea of how to fix it or how to improve it, because I was like, yeah, that's what I will spend the next month thinking about. And then once I figure it out, like the pages will come in like 2 days, but it's just the time that I have to sift through the ideas that takes 5 ever. And like now they understand that, and that was really helpful for moving forward. It's also been really helpful to have like these feedback sessions with them scheduled so they know like this is the date to read so many pages by, which again, caveat, you're supposed to give beta readers a full draft. You're not supposed to give them pieces of a draft because so many things typically change throughout multiple drafts of a novel. But as I've also told you, I'm a perfectionist and I plan everything out in advance, and I almost always write in order. So it's not like they're going to be reading the end and then the middle and then the beginning. Like I'm writing the story in order and I'm sending them the beats in order as they happen. So far, there is one scene I've decided to move from the middle of the book to the end of the book, but it doesn't change anything in terms of like what's happening in the story. It won't make anything not make sense to them. But I'm proud of all of the pages that I've written. I'm really happy with my scenes. I'm really personally entertained by my own book, which, hey, if nobody else ever reads this but me and my like 7 friends and it entertains the 8 of us, I'm good with that. Like it's been really fun. I'm proud that like I went out of town a few times, and on some of the trips, I did write at least one time while I was gone. That's more than I expected to. But also that I was just like, I've been doing a lot of traveling that's making me really tired, and I need to prioritize sleep because I can't force creativity. So I'm proud of like sitting back and being like, it really wasn't a realistic goal that I was going to write every day in November when I wasn't going to be home for so much of it. Moving into what I'm learning from God right now, I feel like it's the same thing that I've been learning all year, which is just that things come in different packages, shapes, and sizes. And when I get so stuck on like my idea or my vision of what something is going to look like, that will almost always distract me from like actually seeing the thing. So it's kind of like if you are expecting God to answer a prayer in a specific way where you for example, if you're one of those people who says like, make it snow on Tuesday. Well, actually, that actually is really specific. Maybe that would work. I don't pray like that. So if that does work for you, feel free to write it and let me know how that works. That wasn't a good example, but maybe if you have like a spiritual mentor or a pastor or a leader or a friend that you typically get your like spiritual advice from, or somebody that you might go to if you're like studying scripture and you're struggling with what it means, the person that your go-to person, if you're expecting to get your word from God from that person, you may not be open to getting it from like your friend who's not a believer, who never goes to church, but that person can still be used by God. So I think it's just stuff like that where it's like if I'm wanting a friend and I'm looking at like, I want a friend who is female in her 30s, lives alone, works from home, lives within so many miles of me. Like if that's what I'm looking for, then I'm not going to pay attention when I meet people that like maybe they're older, maybe they're younger, maybe they don't live alone, maybe they've got kids, maybe they're married, and maybe they are still a really great friend, but I'm not even like reaching out to them and trying to pursue a friendship because I'm looking for that specific friend that I had in mind. This week, my pastor preached on prompting, and he was talking about how like we try to prompt God the way that we prompt ChatGPT, where, you have to give ChatGPT like very, very specific direction in order to get like a very specific output. And a lot of us pray that way, where we tell God like this very specific thing that we want. And he's like, it shouldn't be us prompting God. It should be God prompting us. And instead of telling God what we want him to do, we should be asking God, like, what do you want to do? And how do you want me to be a part of it? And what do you want me to do? Which I totally understand the message, but it feels contradictory and counterintuitive to previous messages my pastor has given, where he'll talk about like God is the God of immeasurably more, and he can do so much more than you can even ask or imagine, and you're not asking big enough, and you're not thinking big enough or believing big enough. And I'm like, so which is it? Am I not asking for enough, or am I asking for too much because I shouldn't be asking for anything at all? I should just be sitting here and being like, what should I do, God? And waiting for an answer. So my small group has been talking about this the past few weeks, and the conclusion that we've come to is it's kind of a both and, where we're kind of looking at it as like, yes, we desire things and we want to communicate those to God, even though he already knows what they are. But there's the analogy of like, you know, as a parent, if your kid like really wants a bike and they trust that like they know that you are what's going to get them a bike because you have the job and you dictate the finances of the household or whatever. And even though they know that and you know that, like as the parent, you still want them to come and ask you for it, and then you get it for them for Christmas or a birthday or whatever. So we kind of use that analogy to like, that's why we still ask God for things, even though he already knows what we want. But I think that we should be like expectant and ask for like more than we can imagine, and just be like, yeah, totally blow my mind, God, that would be awesome. Like I would love for $10 million just appear in my bank account tomorrow. Please, Jesus, amen. But I think it's that coupled with, and God, please show me how you are working in my life and my finances and my relationships and my job. Show me where you're moving and how you want me to be a part of it. Who do you want me to talk to? What do you want me to do with this money? What do you want me to do with this time? And I think all of those things can work together. And that way you're not so stuck on looking for the thing that you're praying for or waiting on, or the thing that you want. Like you're not so stuck on like having to ask God very specifically for a job in this city at this company that makes this much money, but you've asked for that while also saying, what do you want me to do? Because God could be working on that, and it could be like a 5-year, 10-year plan thing. And there are steps for you to take along the way. There are different jobs for you to take with different amounts of money in different cities, which is ultimately going to get you to where you want to be. And while you're on the journey to get there, where you want to be may change. And so you may end up making more or less or whatever than you initially requested 5 years ago, but your situation may also change where your needs are different, and that's why your wants are different too. The one thing I do remember about the last episode I put out was that I was really, really anxious about going on my first ever solo trip. So I want to tell you guys about that, because if you are on the fence, if you've been thinking about it, let this be your sign to book the solo trip. It is absolutely the best thing I ever did. I'm so glad that I did it. I'm so grateful. I would absolutely, and well, I've already booked my next one, like absolutely doing it again. Highly recommend. 10 out of 10, no notes. So I initially decided to book a solo trip because I was sad, really and truly. I was just having a lot of issues like traveling with friends and just not being able to agree on like where we were going to go or what we were going to do, and just dealing with so many different budgets and so many different opinions. Like it was feeling really, really hard. And as most of you know, I go to Disney for my birthday every year, and I've been kind of like trialing different groups of people for my birthday trip to Disney. And like sometimes it went really well, but it would go really well with people that don't want to do it every year. So then I would bring different people, and sometimes it went horribly. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm never doing that again. But I don't want to be sad on my birthday. So initially I just was like sitting here thinking like, I'm going to just go on a trip by myself because I don't have any friends to travel with. And it was truly like initially born out of sadness and the fact that I really wanted to go on a cruise, and the friends that I have found that I do travel pretty well with were not interested in cruising. So I was like, do I have to go alone? I will. So once it was kind of like an idea in my mind of something that I might do or something I might have to do, I started researching solo travel. I found Jennifer on Instagram. I'll link all her info in the show notes if you guys are interested in checking her out. But Jen is a world-class solo traveler, and she influences other people to solo travel too, and she's a travel agent. And like, I just loved watching how much fun she was having by herself. And like, this is a Black woman that's just like out traveling the world alone. And I was like, I want to do that. Like, that looks really fun. That looks really cool. And so I like sent her some messages, started following her and just like watching. And so one of the things that she books every year is the Friendsgiving cruise on Virgin Voyages. And so this is like the group this year, I think there were 50 of us. So everyone like books through her as a solo traveler, but then she's got everyone that booked through her in a group chat on WhatsApp. And so it was nice because you're like alone but together, right? So it's like while we're traveling in and everything, we are all in the chat being like, just made it to Miami, just made it to my hotel, and we're all staying at different hotels, but there was something really comforting in knowing that other people were doing the same thing that I was doing. And then she set up some Zoom calls weeks before the cruise so that we could all like get to know each other and at least see some familiar faces and know kind of like where people were traveling from and what people were into and how many cruises people had been on and whose first solo trip it was. She also had a Facebook page for us. And so all of that was really cool. So you kind of had a good idea of who at least a few people were before we got on the boat. And then once we got on the ship, it just had like the best time. I was really, really, really anxious before going on this cruise. Like I was so worried about doing a trip by myself. Not really that I thought anything would like any harm would come to me, but it was more that I just thought I was going to be sad. I was like, I imagine that if I go traveling alone, I'm going to be sitting at restaurants by myself and just looking around at all the other families and friends and couples and just feeling like, why am I here by myself? Like, why don't I have anyone? Why doesn't anyone love me? Like, why do I have to do everything alone? So I did take some baby steps. Like I booked the cruise a year in advance. And so then I gave myself all year to kind of work up to it. So the first thing I did, like when I did my my birthday trip to Disney earlier this year, like the friends that came with me like don't like to get up early and I like to rope drop. So I was just like, you know what? One of these days, I'm not going to sit here and wait for them to get up and get ready. I'm going to just go to the park by myself and just ride a ride by myself and see how it goes. And so I did, and I like met this family in line, and the mom was like, oh my gosh, are you by yourself? And I was like, well, no, I'm not. Like, I've got friends here with me for this. We're here celebrating my birthday, but they couldn't wake up, and I really wanted to ride this morning. And she was like, oh my gosh, happy birthday. Join my family. Like, introduced me to her kids, and like, it was just the three of them, and the ride seat's 4. So she was like, join us. And like, there are super nice people like that everywhere. Like there's always someone to meet, there's always someone to talk to, there's always a cute little family that will adopt you, especially at Disney. But so that was kind of the first day that I was like, sure, yeah, like I came with people that are back at the hotel, but I spent the entire first half of that day just wandering the park by myself, and I had a great time. I was like, I didn't have to worry about not getting to ride the ride. I didn't have to worry about if the line was too long or if other people's feet were hurting or people were hungry or having to do something that someone else wanted to do. It was just fully like, what do I want to do today? And then my next baby step was taking myself out to eat a few times because that's something I had never done. And maybe I'm just super judgmental because anytime I'm out to eat and I see somebody like sitting there eating by themselves, I'm like, where's their family? Like, why are they alone? And so I just kind of assumed that people would stare at me and be like, why is that girl alone? Where's her family? Does she not have any friends? Does nobody love her? But in most cases, we're all very self-absorbed and thinking about ourselves, and nobody is worried about the person that's sitting and eating alone. And so I did go out to eat, and I've been to like a Panera or something, but I hadn't done like a sit down restaurant. So, and I knew I was going to be doing that on the cruise. So I wanted to try it out before the cruise. I did it a couple times and it was completely fine. Like one time I just sat on my phone the whole time, and the second time I put my phone down and I just like sat there and thought about my book and I just kind of worked on my novel. And I was like, again, it's really peaceful. Like it's really nice. There's nobody, like you don't have to worry about anyone else's opinion of like what I'm ordering or like weird stuff about food. It's just fully like me deciding what I want and enjoying a meal, taking as long as I want to be here, and I didn't die. So the cruise itself, we did a 5-day cruise on Virgin Voyages, which was so much fun. Absolutely blew my mind how much fun it was. If you don't know, Virgin is an adult-only cruise line. This was only my second cruise, and the only cruise line I have to compare it to is Disney, which obviously these are wildly different experiences. So I would say for Virgin, I feel like is built for solo travel, or I wouldn't necessarily say built for, because it's not that like you can't have fun with a family, but I would say if you want to go on a solo cruise, I would cruise Virgin. specifically because with it being adult only, and with it having a lot of solo travelers, they have solo cabins. They have a little note that they'll leave in your room to say like, you appear to be traveling alone. If that's the case, we have solo travel meetups, and they also plan like dinners for solo travelers. So it's like you can eat by yourself, but if you don't want to, like they've pre-planned like a group thing, which I think is really, really cool. I don't think I would do a solo cruise with Disney, at least not in this phase of my life. Primarily because I guess I'll have to look into if they do the dining differently on different ships. But so on Virgin, the dining, all of the restaurants are included, and you can book any of the sit down restaurants and just like book a table for one. When I cruised Disney, I cruised on the Disney Wish, and they did rotational dining. So like your dining was assigned, like your family was assigned a certain restaurant each night. And so I'm like, I guess that could still work if you're by yourself, but like in the dinner theater, it was like really long tables and stuff. And I'm just wondering, like, if you're alone, do they have tables for one, or would they just add you to a family? Like, I would have to look into how the dining would work. But also, you know, there are, if you cruise Disney, there's a million children everywhere. And if you cruise Virgin, there are none anywhere. So it's just kind of, even though I am like the biggest Disney adult and like I am the child on my Disney vacation, I still like, I love that Disney is family friendly, even though I don't have a family to take with me. But even like when I cruised Disney, I cruised with my adult parents and my adult sisters, and like I was the child. This was 2 years ago. And it was really, really fun. Like I loved the Disney cruise. In terms of entertainment, I did find Disney to be a higher caliber in terms of like the shows. I felt like there was more going on the Disney cruise in terms of, it felt like karaoke was running like every 2 hours and trivia was running every 2 hours, where like on Virgin, there was karaoke, but like karaoke happened twice in the 5 days. And then they had private rooms that you can book, which was awesome because Disney did not have that. But I felt like there was trivia, there was karaoke, there were like stage shows, comedy shows, but it felt like everything was kind of, it was like the comedy shows on Tuesday at 9. Can you make it or not? Whereas I felt like at Disney, it was like the theater is showing the movie every hour on the hour. So like, when do you want to go? Whenever you can fit it into your schedule. Like you can do, like, I guess that's the main difference for me. I felt like everything that we wanted to do on the Disney cruise was possible to do, and we were only on the cruise for 3 days. And I felt like there's stuff that I missed out on Virgin, either because it was booked and there wasn't room, or because it was happening at the same time as something else that I wanted to do, and then it wasn't offered again. Like it wasn't offered enough time for me to be able to do everything. That said, the food was absolutely amazing. I don't like children, so I love that it's adult only. The crew on Virgin Voyages is just chef's kiss. Everybody is amazing. It's really, really fun. It just the vibes were, it was very chill vibes the whole time. Like I feel like everybody was having a great time. Everybody was really nice. It also is just, it's a lot smaller than Disney, which I actually really liked, because it kind of felt like by the third day, it's like you're seeing the same people in the elevator and the same people at breakfast. And it just kind of felt like we all became like a giant family, like everybody that was on the cruise. And that was really cool, where I feel like when I was on the Disney cruise, it's like I would have a conversation with somebody like at trivia, and then I would never see them again for the rest of the trip, which, you know, to each their own if you have a preference. But I would say as far as solo travel goes, I highly recommend Virgin. I feel like they have a lot of stuff in place for solo travelers to make sure that you are comfortable and feel safe and have a good time. And it was really, really freeing. And then in addition to the solo sailor meetup, which I think happened every day, I only went to the first one, to be honest, so I don't know how often it was, but I'm pretty sure it was, I think it was most days, or if not every other day. But in addition to that, and then the dinners that they planned, which definitely happened every day, my travel agent Jen planned different activities for like everyone that booked through her, and so that was really cool because it was all optional to do, of course, right? She's like, hey, we're all gonna do like a neon party this place, at like meet up this place this time for this picture and like hang out, and if you want to, and if you don't, then don't, go do your own thing. But so that was nice also that she had us all in the group chat, because if, whenever she was planning something, she'd get there early to like get us a spot and make sure there were like seats for everyone. But also, as people were finding other stuff they wanted to do, you would just hop in the chat and be like, hey, we're at the pool, there's extra space if anyone wants to come. Like, hey, we're at the bar, there's extra space if anyone wants to come. Or like, hey, I'm booking bingo, does anyone want to come do this with me? And so it was very much like, we're all there by ourselves, but we were also all there together. And there were almost always, I shouldn't even say almost always, there was always at least 2 other people in the group of us that like wanted to do the same thing. Or we would like, I'd be at my solo dinner and somebody else would be at their solo dinner across the restaurant or next to me. And so sometimes we would just like combine our reservations and merge tables. Sometimes we'd like eat our own and then hang out after. But it was also like, we'd always find each other like in the hallways, or like anytime that you didn't want to do something alone, you could just hop into the group chat and be like, well, what is everybody else up to? And like easily find somebody nearby to go do something with. So it was really fun. Highly recommend. I really liked the idea of doing a cruise for my first solo trip, mostly because the cruise ship is self-contained and there's only so far that you can go and there's only so lots that you can get. Obviously I've traveled by myself in terms of like, I go to visit my friends all the time. So I fly by myself, I get an Uber to my friend's house, but usually I'm going to like meet somebody. I've been to a few like weddings or other events where I go and I stay in a hotel by myself, but then like I meet up with people I know at the wedding or whatever. But whenever I do stuff like that, I don't really explore the city. I usually go from the airport to my hotel to the venue, back to the hotel to the airport, and then leave. So I liked, because I just am scared of getting lost in a foreign city or country. And so I liked the idea with like being on a cruise, that I was like, okay, well, Virgin Voyages has their beach club in the Bahamas. So like, we're all going to get off the ship together and like take the tram to the beach club and then be at Virgin's beach club and then all journey back together. Like, it's not like I'm going to go exploring and then could potentially get lost and get left. Like, that's just not something I'm interested in doing. So the cruise was a really good option for me for a solo trip. And that's definitely what I'm going to do again next year. This did not make me feel any more inclined to like go explore another city or country by myself. I don't know if that's something that I would want to do, but I also just really, really love cruising. Like I love being at sea. I love being on the water. I wish that I was a mermaid, but I just think that cruising is a really fun vacation. It's got everything that I want is on the ship. Whereas if I'm going to travel to see like the Eiffel Tower or something, I'm just kind of like, I care more about people and experiences than I really do like things or like seeing things. So I'm just kind of like, also like you can get a close up of the Mona Lisa on Google, and you can only get so close to it when you're in the Louvre. So it's just kind of like, I don't know how worth it that was. Now, well, we didn't travel for that. I was studying abroad and we like spent a day going to art museums and stuff. But I feel like big trips like that, for some reason, I still want somebody with me. Like, I want to experience it with someone. And being on the cruise, I felt like I was perfectly happy to just wake up and look at the ocean every day, even if I had never left my room and like joined any of the other activities or met anybody else. I think I still would have had a really good time. And then the other thing that I really loved about the solo travel group, because you guys know I complain about small talk all the time, is that honestly, like beyond the initial where are you from, there really was no small talk, because pretty much the immediate next question was, why are you on a solo trip? And there's typically a story behind that. So that was awesome to just be at dinner with all of these other people who were also on a solo trip. And like for a lot of us, it was our first solo trip. A lot of people had been doing it a while. For some people, it was their first ever cruise. For a lot of us, it was not our first cruise, but it was our first Virgin cruise. And there were all stories behind that of like, well, how did you get into solo traveling? And like, how, you know, that just got us deeper immediately. And I feel like that formed like bonds and friendships like very quickly, which was nice that there wasn't a whole lot of like, so what do you do for work? Good. And do you like that? Interesting. What did you study in school? Where are you from again? Because it's like those little things. I don't know what it is about those like the small talk questions that we don't remember. It's kind of like, unless you repeat somebody's name so many times, you forget it immediately. And like, I forget like where people work, but I was looking around the group as I was walking around the ship and I was like, I don't remember that woman's name or where she lives, but I know that she's been on 3 Virgin cruises and that she's on a mission to be on every ship that Virgin has. And I think that's awesome. And, you know, or I'd be like, I know that this is that girl's first solo cruise ever. And like, she's like in the same boat as me. And like, those are the kind of things that we would remember. And so it was cool to like get straight into like kind of the meat of a person where it's like, we kind of figured out very quickly who are the extroverts and who were the introverts. And that was another thing that was really nice about being on a solo trip, that I could just be like, you know what? I'm overstimulated. I'm going to go to my room. And like, you know, I wasn't sharing my room with anyone to save money or anything. So I didn't have to worry about like my friends wanting to come back at different times and like some people being asleep and then having to wake people up by coming back to the room. But also, you know, the group was like out at a party and I said like, I'm going to go rest for a bit and then I'll come out because I really do want to come. And then I had them texting me being like, hey girl, wake up. Like we're at the party. And I was like, I'm already under the covers and I'm not coming back out. And just to have people be like, cool, see you tomorrow, you know, because it's like I'm not somebody that they traveled there with. Like they weren't there to spend time with me. So they weren't going to go out of their way to make sure that I was at the thing. But they also like, I did say like, please follow up with me because I do want to come. And they did. And then I was like, I changed my mind. And they were like, that's cool too. And we just kind of moved on from there. And there wasn't a weird like, oh, you didn't hang out with us last night, so we're not going to hang out with you today. You know, it's like we all woke up the next day and like went to the beach together and everything was fine and normal and great. For today's hard conversation segment, it's interesting. I don't know that this really counts. I don't think that this was really a hard conversation, but I thought it was an interesting one. So I had a friend, or I guess a previous friend that I had a falling out with, reach out and apologized for like the way that she handled whatever happened. And basically we had kind of like, I wouldn't even call it a massive disagreement, but there was a lot of confusion over something. And like this person got very upset with me and I had reached out to say like, really, I'm not understanding why you're upset, but can we discuss it? And they were like, you know, let's discuss it later. And I kind of felt in that moment, I was like, because they're not willing to discuss it now, I don't think they're willing to discuss it ever. I think they're just putting this off, but I wanted to be respectful. So I waited until they told me that they would discuss it with me and then followed up again. And then they were like, there's nothing else to say, like, never mind. And so they kind of just cut me off and were like, let's just not speak anymore. We're not friends anymore or whatever. And at the time, I was definitely hurt and annoyed by it, but I also had a lot of really close friends that were rallying around me in the moment where I was like, you know, I'm not going to put too much energy into this. I'm not going to cry over it. Like, if this person doesn't like me and I'm not worth reconciling with to them, then I'm not going to chase them. I'm going to just move on. And so when they reached out a couple weeks ago, it was interesting because it was right in the midst of me having multiple conversations with other friends about kind of how we wish that when people come into our lives, they would say like, hi, I'm Samantha. I'm going to be your best friend for the next 2 years. And then I'm going to screw you over and you're going to hate me, but it's going to be a great 2 years. And then we have like a countdown so that we know when that's going to happen. Or like, hey, I'm going to be a wishy-washy friend for the next 5 years. And then I'm going to just fall off the face of the earth, you know, or whatever it is. And we were just kind of talking about how like we really wish that we could know that going in so we could better prepare and like how to navigate through the relationship. And we're like, obviously though, that can't happen. That's not life. And I was telling my friends when we were having these conversations that, I think the piece that we're missing is acknowledging that all of those different friendships are still meaningful. Like, just because somebody stabbed you in the back or fell off the face of the earth, or you just grew apart and there wasn't even any like negative thing that happened, that doesn't negate the good friendship that they brought while they were there. And so the fact that this previous friend of mine like reached out in the midst of that and said like, you've been on my mind, I don't really know why I'm reaching out, but I just like wanted to acknowledge that you were willing to speak about what had happened between us, and I just completely shut down and cut you off, and I apologize for that. I maybe didn't handle it the best way. And I really appreciated that. And I just told them like, I don't fault you for doing that, because I think that I was pushing too hard to have the conversation and you clearly weren't ready for it. So I think that if you had given in and just had the conversation with me, we probably would have just fought and made things even worse. So, who am I to say that we have to have the conversation? I think it's good that you held your boundary and you were like, no, I don't want to talk to you. Like, I'm too hurt by this and whatever. And we kind of got into kind of how we both were feeling, because to be quite honest with you guys, I'm still very confused about the whole thing and don't fully understand like what happened. And we just kind of talked about how like we both started to feel like the friendship was hard. And I think I was in a place where I was like, you are in my inner circle. Like, I've already locked you in for life. And whatever happens, we're going to work through it. And like, she was not on that same page with me. She was like, I feel like this is hard. And so I'm backing away from it because we're not locked in for life. Like, there are still things that can be said and done that are going to make me not want to be a part of this friendship, And that's just like, we weren't on the same page about that. And it is what it is. But I was so glad that she reached out, because I was able to tell her, like, you were my best friend for like 3.5 years. And that time was beautiful. That is a long time that you are the person that listened to me, that like called me when you were sad, that I called when I was sad, that like gave me a lot of advice and was really like a good, strong listening ear, and somebody that made me laugh, and like my go-to person for a very long time. And thank you for that. Like, I was never, when she reached out, like, I was never under any pretense of like, oh my gosh, we're going to be friends again. And I don't necessarily want that. And I don't think she necessarily wanted that. And I think we both at some point, because we, like, a few days went by that we were talking about this. And I think at some point we probably were both feeling like, when does this end? How does this end? Like, do we have to keep this going now? But it was really nice to be able to sit back and be like, no, we don't. Like, but it's awesome to be able to acknowledge, like, we still had a beautiful friendship, and it didn't last forever. It was never meant to last forever. It didn't need to last forever. And that's totally okay. That doesn't take anything away from the fact that we were best friends for 3.5 years. What I'm watching right now, oh my gosh, you guys, I've seen so many movies in the last 2 months. I cannot even name them all. Currently in this moment, just this week, I finished my rewatch of The 100, which I maintain that is a solid show from start to finish, aside from like the very last 5 episodes I did not love. But it is what it is. And I'm currently in, I think, season 5. I'm in season 5 or 6 of The Vampire Diaries, and it's rough. It's a rough time. I'm like, ooh, I need to just go back and watch 1 through 4 and just pretend that it ends after 4 and start again. Because that is a struggle. I'm trying to think of the most recent screenings that I went to. The Housemaid, I loved a lot. That was so much fun. Wicked for Good, obviously amazing, but like I don't love Act 2 of the Wicked musical, so I did not love it as much as Wicked. But again, that is what it is. I would love to hear what you guys are up to, what goals you're working toward. Do you even bother at this point in the year, or are you just like, anything that I didn't do, I'm just setting aside and I'll just start again in January, try again? Where do you sit with that whole process? Feel free to send me an email at realhonestpod@gmail.com if you want to chat, have any questions, comments, concerns. Thank you so much for listening. See you next Wednesday.
I'm not here to sugarcoat, life's already a bumpy road. Too much shelter causes pain, let's just be real honest. Things are gonna knock you down, avoidance will not help you out. Let's talk it through, hear me and you, let's keep it real honest.